Back in 1962, Agri Supplies started with a simple creed: provide good, solid products at a fair price. Add in stellar customer service and you have the best option. There's 9 locations across North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia, and their robust online ordering makes it easy for anyone in the world to experience the Agri way. Don't hesitate. Go to agrisupply.com to find just the product you're looking for. Unless you're saddling up a horse, getting to your favorite fishing or hunting destination depends on fuel. That's why we choose Quality Mart, Quality Plus, and Go Gas. With 137 locations across North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and South Carolina, you'll find the fuel to get you to the field or on the water, and the ice, drinks, and snacks to enjoy your time while you're there. That's Quality Mart, Quality Plus, and Go Gas, official partners of Carolina All Out.
It's the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast with Chris Douglas, where the conversation covers all things in the NC outdoors pertaining to hunting and fishing. Like and subscribe to get all the hunting and fishing info from the top guides, locals, and conservation agencies. Hear from biologists and professionals in the field about what things matter to you most. From the studios in Lemon Springs, North Carolina, your host, Chris Douglas.
And welcome to the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast, brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cooker. I'm your humble host, Chris Douglas, and sitting in the studio with me is Thomas Moore.
Chris, how you doing, sir?
Doing great. Now, people would probably know you or know your YouTube channel as YellowLab 2427.
You got a lot of people don't know me by name for a reason, just some security stuff. So when I get on the forums, people are like, Thomas Moore, I feel like I've seen you before. And I'm like, yeah, you have a different go-by name, an alias, if you will. And yeah, it's always funny. I was at a turkey banquet, and a guy comes up behind me, and I just hear YellowLab behind me.
Yeah.
He ended up being a huge fan of the channel. So yeah, it's been pretty fun. And
usually people say Carolina out, and they'll never get it right.
That's right.
But at least they're getting you. They got YellowLab. Yeah,
that's right.
They know who we are and that sort of thing. So to give the big introduction there to everyone that's going on, we obviously are on YouTube. We're not a YouTuber, to so to speak, but that would be what you would be considered as a YouTuber. And the funny thing about it, guys, is that Thomas and I don't live that far apart from one another.
Nope.
And I didn't realize that. I was seeing his stuff out there. I was seeing that he was making, he was North Carolina. There was some references and things that I was picking up on. But then when we finally made that connection with one another, we realized we weren't that far. We're in the same county. So that's right. Pretty cool. Lee County boy.
Trying to coordinate how far apart this drive is going to be. And he said, well, I'm in Lemon. I said, well, I'm in Sanford. And it turns out we're neighbors. So.
Just opposite ends of the county.
That's
there.
right.
So yeah,
cool.
That's very cool. And to see that Thomas has got a real niche that he's working in right now with planning, and we're going to get into all that sort of stuff on the podcast here to let you guys know more about him, because part of this, the reason why we're doing this is for an introduction to Thomas, and that we find that we're talking with him more about food plots, and that's what he does, and about some of the other successes he's having with rice.
That's right.
And duck planting and that sort of thing. So it's all very fascinating. I think it's going to be a really good show for you guys. And if you have an interest in the outdoors, and especially, I know there's going to be a bunch of guys that's going to be interested in this rice planting stuff.
There is, yeah. All the duck hunters and landowners, got beaver ponds, swamp, farm ponds.
Yes.
They're going to say, this is interesting. It's going to be some good stuff.
Yeah. So we'll jump right into it there. So let's talk about, let's go ahead and get through the formalities of YellowLab. How did you get that name?
Sure. So I was just graduated high school, and I had started a new job, and a friend of mine had a YellowLab himself, and he had trained Webster, was his dog's name, Zach Davenport. He'll see this for sure. And Webster was just such a gentleman to hunt with, and I said, I need me a YellowLab. So I did all my research, and at the time didn't have any money, but had to spend as much as I could, and went and bought this dog, and out of Pennsylvania, and her name was Aspen. If I get teared up, just bear with me.
Right.
But, Aspen, and she was a YellowLab out of Pennsylvania, and gave her my all. She was my 24/7. She went to school with me, and she would sleep in the back of the truck while I was at NC State in classes. I'd come out, I lived off campus, and she'd go to work with me. I did pond management, and she'd ride around with me, walk around ponds, and had no girlfriend, and she was my everything. And
how about that?
And I started a YouTube channel as a place to just upload experiences and fishing trips and some things. And I said, well, I like my YellowLab, and she kind of organically came to me with no intentions of starting a YouTube channel for the purposes of growing a YouTube channel. Really, it's just a repository for parking some videos and fishing content. and went with the YellowLab 24/7 and just kind of stuck. So
Right.
it all goes back to my first dog, Aspen. Yep.
And so how long ago was that you started the channel?
Man, that's going to be 12 years ago. I think I checked my
12
date
years.
the other day. 12 or 13 years ago is
How
when
about that?
the very first video was uploaded, and it was unrelated to all this. Again, it was just more of a repository for parking some fishing stuff, and
Right.
and really it wasn't until 2020 COVID hit. We all had a little more time in our hands, and we had bought 40 acres, or Mom and Dad had bought 40 acres in Bear Creek.
Okay.
And it had a field in it, and it was just a fescue pasture, and we always dove hunted. Childhood memories with Dad was going out opening day of dove season, right? September 1st, everybody's got their calendars marked in North Carolina.
That's right.
You're going dove hunting.
That's right.
And so that was childhood memories, and we always had a dream of having our own dove field. We were always subject to other people's invites and properties and things, and we always had a dream of having our own dove field. And so we started plowing dirt, and had one small tractor, 20-horse tractor, a bush hog, and a disc, and buckets. Didn't even have a seeder. And we started working on this field, and me and Dad out there, and we had a dove field the first year. It was, looking back on it, it had a lot of improvements it needed, but
Right.
We had a successful hunt, and Dad and like, hey, this was fun. We enjoyed the process together, and building it, and then having that hunt together, and we decided to start kind of building upon it, and it became more successful. I said, I'd like to share this with people. People do this YouTube thing where they share updates and show what they're working on, and just started filming one day and just sharing, and a channel that was flat just started kind of growing a little bit. And I said, people seem to be interested in this. So I'd make another video, and then people would get in comments asking questions. And I said, well, I can make a video about that too. And each video would build on itself, and it became frequent updates about this project we were working on, building this dove field out. And the viewer engagement started going very exponential, and
Right.
people were really buying into this, that, hey, small tractor, small equipment, we can have a dove field. And a lot of people thought you had to have big ag equipment and big farm equipment and all these planters and things to have a successful dove field. And that just wasn't the case, and we were showing that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now part of your job for real
Yeah.
kind of helps play into some of this that you're
That's
doing
right.
now.
Yep. So I spent 18 years doing lake and pond management.
Okay.
And I'm commercially licensed to spray aquatic pesticides. And so I just had a really oriented brain for reading labels, reading herbicides, plants, plant growth, plant cycles, and just understanding how to propagate plants as well as control invasives in plants, which tied perfectly into the agricultural side of it, of growing a dove field. And so I had a baseline in it, but that was not my field of study. I'm not a farmer. We're not farmers. We're not from a farming community.
Right.
This was kind of all self-taught, but I did have a foundation in understanding just how to get things to grow and then how to control invasives.
So for you encouraging people, this is obviously giving you some authority in that field to whatever degree you believe
That's right.
you have.
Yeah, I kind of pinch myself sometimes when I'll see me and other people's comments saying, you need to go check out YellowLab. He's got this stuff figured out. And I'm like, I don't really have this figured out.
Right.
I'm just kind of figuring my way out. And I kind of joke that, this is the channel you come to, when I'm making mistakes. That this is what not to do, right?
Right.
But that's all part of the process. And that's what we'll get into is there's not one set way to do these things. And you don't have to have the big tractor, have to have the big planter.
Right.
There's things you can do all the way down just to an ATV and a bag spreader. And that's what we're really trying to do is encourage people to maximize the resources you have available to you.
That's right.
That you too can do this on your small homestead.
So I'm just thinking about, people out there listening to what you're saying there with your experience. So you started out planting these dove fields or a dove field.
That's right.
To experience that. You had a lot of trial and error involved in that.
That's right.
The schooling has kind of brought you into, and your job now has brought you into maybe a higher understanding.
That's right. More technical side.
Technical side.
That's right.
But you still have the trial and error that is really, at the end of the day, is what proves it all.
Absolutely. And we're subject to weather, just like any farmer is.
Right.
We have drought years, we have flood years, we had weevils, we have insects that come in and wipe us out. We're not immune to any of the same things that rural farmers are. It's just the joke is that we don't make any money. We actually spend money to go out there and do this.
But the reward, hey,
reward
money's not always everything, especially
right.
in this game. And we're playing. Obviously, we've got our brand of the Fall Feast. We've got
That's
a brand of seed, and so we're having a lot of fun with that. And it's one reason why we're doing this podcast is because Thomas has the experience that he does. And so we're always looking at, my background is farming. I obviously come from a farming family, but have been so far removed from that for so long. It's like trying to relearn some things all over again.
And a lot has changed, technologies
Yes.
and rates and how, conventional tillage versus the no-till. There's a lot of things that have evolved, and it continues to evolve.
Yeah.
But yeah, it started out very, very organic and a lot of trial and error. And then we just every year we would improve upon what we did the year before. And Dad invested in equipment, and I would invest in time and equipment. And we got to a point where we were really able to put a dove field together and wanted to share that with the world. And the amount of stories of people coming back to us saying, we followed what you recommended and it worked.
Right.
And that was pretty cool to hear.
That's got to be cool.
And I get those a lot. I get those emails. People send me pictures of the, all the doves laid across the tailgate and all the whole family out there. And it's like, this was our first year. We did exactly what you said.
That is awesome.
It's awesome.
I really like that. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because we get that feedback sometimes, and it's like, hey, you inspired me to do this. And they show us the results, and we're just like, man, this is what we do it for.
That's our why,
That's what we
right?
do.
The
that's
family
our why.
component, the camaraderie, and especially when kids are in the picture. As a father of two young boys, I mean,
Right.
That's just it, right?
Yeah,
there.
part of one of these questions is about an inspiration here, and we're hitting right on that, because it's what we're here to do is to inspire, and the experience that is improved. Yes, you're 100% right. Through the dove seasons, through the years I've done this, it was like, you wait down to the last minute. Maybe you go do a pay field. Maybe you just go find a cutover somewhere where another shooter. Maybe somebody says, hey, I got a few doves on me.
Go get in line at the game lands and like
Exactly.
the Elmer Fudd, right? 100 guns in the air shooting at the one bird flying over.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that you have to chuckle at. And I remember having some, we were farmers, and we had some years, depending on what was planted, you had a fantastic year. And other years it was left a lot to be desired.
And we still do that. We still have that. Like this past year, it was a storm the night before. It was warm and it was foggy.
Yeah.
We still did our shooting, still got our birds, but it was tough. Had to hunt till about noon. And
Right.
so just because you have a well thought out, managed, and invested dove field, you're not immune to all those other factors.
Well, I want to get into that, the kind of the nuts and bolts about this, but I'm just thinking, man, there's just so much here that we want to cover here. Whenever you're approaching this thing, so people are going to be listening, they're going to be trying to figure out. So we're going to talk specifically about doves for the moment. We'll get into the ducks a little bit later, and we'll go to break in just a little bit. But I want to get this kind of started off here. If a guy has what's going to be his minimum? I mean, there's going to be people listening. What's going to be the minimum amount that I can plant that I'm going to draw birds and have enough for maybe a shoot? Is that, or I know that's not quite like that, but let's talk about that a little bit.
You're onto something there, because it all depends on the area you're in. If you're in a predominantly forested area of Lee County and you just have a little micro half acre, it's going to be tough to draw enough birds in there to have a shoot. But if you take that same half acre and you put a half acre of sunflowers next to a soybean field in Bladen County, and you've got that draw next to an already source down there,
Right.
that half acre can be very effective.
Right.
And so it kind of depends on where you are. For us, I am that first example where we're predominantly forest. We do have a lot of corn and ag up the road from us, but we're an isolated 4-acre field in the middle of the woods.
Right.
But we are in a flight path between some ag fields, and our actual tillage area is only 3 acres.
Right.
So we're fairly small acreage compared to your,
Yeah.
the down east dove field, hundreds of acres, right?
Yeah, and that's and that probably has its problems too.
It does,
because the birds are so spread out there.
Yeah, exactly right.
So do you find that we're talking about now? Let's talk about bird behavior a little bit. That potentially, as long as you've been doing this, you've kind of imprinted some birds.
Absolutely.
To be there?
Yep. And it's through some practices we do to attract spring birds. And we're feeding birds in the spring.
Okay.
They're going to nest there. And when they nest there, they're imprinting their young there. So yeah, we have a year-round population of doves, and we've got a fake power line we strung across the field.
Nice.
And so all spring you'll see mom and dad birdies out there sitting on the wires, feeding on the spring wheat and the clover and all. And we do corn for deer, and so they're out there eating corn that may be on the ground too. And so we have imprinted a spring population of doves that are having their nest and their young there. And we kill a lot of young doves too. So the joke is they just fell out of the nest, right? The little tiny one. But it's telling you've got a breeding population there, which is really important.
Yeah, because we noticed that down in Mexico, hunting down there, they call them Aztecas, the little small. They've still got some. The plumage is a little bit different.
That's
than
right.
a
The
mature
coloring
bird.
is different. You can just tell they're immature.
Yeah.
They're smaller. The plumage is different.
And I see that quite a bit. There's quite a bit of those birds there around that I've been involved in over the years there. So you're saying that that's potentially birds that were raised there. That's not migrating birds.
That's correct. Yeah, those are local residential birds that were raised there.
Okay, so migrating birds are going to be your big mature ones.
That's right. Those are your January season, big fat fluffy doves and look like pigeons almost.
Right.
Those are your migratory birds. And that's may not get into that this time, but that's an overlooked season. A lot of people do their September dove hunting and it's time to go deer hunting, duck hunting, whatever.
We've got some footage from this past January that we did.
That'll be great.
We just hit a place, we were near Fort Bragg.
Okay.
And we were actually crow hunting that morning.
Okay.
And we had, we weren't hunting a flyway. It was kind of a run and gun deal, but we weren't going to run anymore. We just set up there. We had, we shot maybe 10 or so crows. And then while we were there, we just kept, between the crows, we had doves buzzing us.
That's right.
And just coming through. And there was a power line just behind us there. So we just broke off from that, turned into a dove hunt. And I mean, it was beautiful because I love that. If they keep coming consistently from the same direction, I can really get
dialed in.
Dialed in. And I was shooting doubles, and I don't get to do that often.
Right.
So it was a lot of fun. But that was a January hunt, and it was awesome. And I would love to do more of that because I love wing shooting.
That's right.
I mean, really,
big
really
passion
good.
of yours, and that's a slept-on season for sure.
Yeah.
Because a lot of your soybeans don't get harvested till really late, even closer to Christmas. And
that's right.
There's no other dove hunters in the field, and soybeans just got cut, and they're cleared fields. You got migratory birds. It can be a lot of fun.
That sounds fantastic. We want to do more of those. We want to show some more of that in the show there. So back to now, we're again talking about behavior. These plots are imprinting on birds.
That's right.
And now time of year, because you want your crops to come off.
Timing is everything.
And timing is everything. So let's talk about that for a little bit there about timing.
So to build on what we're talking about as far as having a spring population and imprinting birds, that starts back in the fall when we're planting our wheat. So we'll actually come in there, top sow our wheat in late August into September. Part of our dove hunting routine is the legal top sowing of wheat.
Right.
But you do get a really good germination from that, and we'll let that go all the way to maturity into the spring and early summer to where it actually matures out and you have your wheat field, and we'll let it sit there. And a couple different years, we've left it standing and done a no-till millet planting back into that wheat. Well, you'll go out there, and before you even see the millet, and doves will just be piling out of that standing wheat because it'll start to mat down, and critters get in there and kind of mat it down.
Right.
And you're feeding a spring population of nesting birds.
Will those heads release that wheat, or are they pulling it straight off of the...
Both. Yeah, so critters will get in there, knock it down, and it kind of mats itself down, and maybe we've gone through there with the tractor and spraying weeds or something, and it seems to create these little pockets, and they'll get in there and feed on it.
So there's this kind of a year-round thing now that we're talking about.
That's right.
That you're keeping, but that's just keeping the food in front of them.
That's correct.
There's more and more. Now, those birds are attracting more birds. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, birds of a feather, right? They flock, and they're drawing birds, and how you manage your hunting is really important as far as pushing your birds out and keeping your birds there.
Right.
But yeah, feeding them, keeping them there, and is a critical piece to having that good population.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's. You can tell I'm very interested in this. I'm hanging on every word that Thomas is saying, because there's things that we want to do to enhance our abilities. Everybody wants to shoot their limit.
That's right. Yeah.
And it would be nice if you could shoot your limit on Saturday and Monday.
That's right. That's right. But we don't do that.
Yeah. And that's something we want to talk about. That. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll go to a break, and then we're going to be talking more with Thomas Moore, YellowLab 24/7 on YouTube. You got to check him out there. He's got a great channel, and we enjoy watching it there.
Thanks, Chris.
Hang in there, and we'll be right back.
Keeping up with Carolina All Out is easy. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Like and follow to keep up with the All Out crew and our friends with posts, stories, and reels that will inspire you to get outdoors. There's some things in life that just makes you feel good when you see it. And something cooking in an old black cast iron skillet does it for me. There's nothing like it. And if it does it for you, then my friends over at Carolina Cooker have just the equipment you need for outdoor cooking, camping, kitchen accessories, and food processing. Check out carolinacooker.com to order from their huge selection, and also find a store near you that carries the brand born in the Carolinas. Carolina Cooker, tools, cooks, legends, you create the tradition.
And we're back, and we're talking about doves, and we're talking about planning, and we're here with Thomas Moore, YellowLab 24/7. He's got a YouTube channel that you need to check out. Turns out we're not that far apart from one another and where we live, and that makes it kind of cool because when he's talking about what he's talking about, we may be shooting the same birds.
I was going to say, we're chasing the same birds out here. Can't give away all the secrets, right?
Yeah. I've done quite a bit down shoots down east, and we do. Obviously, if you watch any of our dove hunting shows, that we have done quite a few with Skip Valentine.
That's right.
Skip, he's got his system for planning, and it's fun to watch. Everybody's kind of got their system for planning,
That's right.
And there's probably going to be some things that you diverge on with him on that sort of stuff. But
on that note, I watched that episode, and I actually rewinded that habitat piece, I think 3 different times,
right?
Just because he started speaking my language really quick, and I'm like, that's cool stuff. And so that's part of why we're doing this podcast. Is that was just a piece of the dove hunting show, right? And I said, Chris, there's a lot of merit there. We could make a whole show out of this. How will you get to that point, the management there? But yeah, what Skip's doing is great. They're managing that property for fowl as well. And they're doing a great job with it. Yeah,
this it proves in the pudding. We shoot a lot of birds, and maybe sometimes we don't shoot a lot, but there's a lot of birds
shoot at a lot of birds,
and that's part of the fun thing. But we say that about opening day of dove season. It is a rite of passage, and whether you're killing birds or not, you're there. And it just kind of rings in the new year, so to speak.
That's right. People say, "Well, I didn't get my limit," and I look at 3 boxes of shells on the ground. And it's like, well,
you had fun.
It wasn't because we didn't have birds.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, it really is. And going back to the sharing the birds and all, and that's the cool thing about dove hunting is people aren't too possessive over their doves, right? Sure. Duck hunters. These are our birds over here, right? Whereas dove hunters, it's like, no, y'all shoot them up, kick them back to us, we'll bang them up and send them back and forth.
Yep.
That's what makes it really fun.
We call it the ring of death. If they get inside that circle in the field, it's like, we'll see if he makes it out.
And we're having fun, but we take it serious. Yeah. I'll tell them, like, that bird doesn't leave when it comes in the field.
That's right.
4 guns go to shooting at it because a lot of time and money went into this field, and we want to see birds on the back of the tailgate. Right. And so, but no, it's a lot of fun. There's nothing like it.
Yeah. Now, we were talking before we went to the break about timing and planning. And I know that's true because, let's take sunflowers, for instance.
That's right.
There's a real, your philosophy, you were talking to me about it on the phone one day, and I really liked what you were saying. So I don't want to throw it into necessarily that. There's lots of things you can plant. Let's talk about what you're planting.
Yeah. So we have pretty much our 2 go-tos, and that's going to be sunflowers and a millet. We have trialed with field corns. We have done grain sorghums, like a dwarf grain sorghum, both fantastic for attracting doves. But I've not seen anything attract birds like a well-maintained sunflower field. And second to
bare
that,
ground
I'm telling you, bare ground, large seeds, it's tough to beat.
Yeah, they do. They really pile in there on top of that. I really like that. Now, we're talking about a Clearfield sunflower variety.
Correct.
All right, talk to people about Clearfield sunflowers.
That's right.
I've heard that name. So.
There's 2 different varieties. Black oil Perdovics is your standard. You can go buy a bag, a 50-pound bag. That's your standard sunflower seed. Then you have a Clearfield hybrid. And that is a modified seed to be drought resistant, bug resistant, a lot of different things. It's been modified, larger heads. But the biggest thing a Clearfield gets you is the ability to post-spray herbicides for weed control. And you had mentioned there's nothing like that clean ground. That's one key way to have clear ground is to be able to come back in there and spray it. And the Clearfield variety allows you more post-emergent options because there's a lot of herbicides for corn, some for grain sorghums and things, but there's very limited herbicides for sunflowers.
Right.
Beyond clethodim, which is a grass herbicide, you can spray that on a regular black oil, but you can't spray any broadleaf control because, sunflower's broadleaf, it'll kill it.
That's right.
And so the Clearfield allows you that ability to come back in there with imazamox. The Beyond is their trade name, but imazamox is the active ingredient, and get a really good broadleaf control post-emergent.
Not glyphosate.
Not glyphosate. Right. And that's a fallacy. I hear a lot of people say, where do you get your Roundup Ready sunflowers? And I said, they don't make them. They said, no, I'm pretty sure they do. Even had, I won't mention the big box store that sells a lot of ag stuff. They said, no, I'm pretty sure we have a Roundup Ready. I said, I'm pretty sure you don't. Yeah. And if you do, I want to know about it. I'm sure they're working on it. Maybe they're not with all the Monsanto stuff. They may not be working on it. But Clearfield is specific to the Beyond herbicide, and that's imazamox. So it's not Roundup Ready. It's a great point.
So for people to understand this again, you're planting these sunflowers, and these sunflowers are just getting, a lot of people think the variety is like these big gigantic ones. No. These only get about maybe 3 feet.
That's right, 3 to 4 feet.
3 to 4 feet.
I walk around. I'm 6'3". I walk around, and a lot of them are about head high sometimes. We get the real, call them the dinner plates, right? You get the big dinner plate ones. Some of them get real big, and they'll get about 6 feet high at the most, but most of them in that 3 to 5 foot range.
And so these birds are, a dove enjoys being able to kind of drop down and eat straight from the ground.
That's correct, yeah.
And you can imagine I'm not speaking for dove, but, surrounded by grass makes it a little bit hard for him to see, and also for him to flap his wings to get up out of there in the event of danger.
And the biggest thing is, that's right, the predator component of it. They don't feel safe in there.
Right.
Snakes, critters can hide in that thick grass down there and ambush them.
And so they really like that open ground. I had an uncle who was a big wing shooter back in the day, and he believed in distant ground for
That's
birds.
right.
So these birds are hitting that, and they blend in so well in that stuff.
They do. They disappear.
That gray that's under there. But these seed heads are turning downward.
That's right.
Because of the weight so much, I guess.
That's right. Well, once they start to dry out, they lose their moisture, and the stem can no longer keep it erect, and so it'll start to tip down.
So it starts to tip down, and that's when these seeds can fall. But I see them landing on it.
Absolutely.
And
I was just about to say that's the benefit of the sunflowers is it's a sturdy enough plant where they can actually land on the head, and you'll see them sitting there, pulling the seed out of it, which is really cool to see.
That is good. Now these, so we're talking about a acre, half acre. What is an effective size? And I know there's other components there, but give me maybe a down east and a Piedmont and a mountain guy.
Yeah, so we plant no less than half an acre, just kind of how our field's set up. And we're not set up to plant really more than an acre where I can't protect them from the deer eating them. That's the biggest problem with planting small acreage sunflowers is the deer love them. Okay. And you'll plant in Clearfield sunflowers, I should add, are 3 times as expensive as Perdovics.
Yes,
so
and I wanted to get into that too, about this expense, because that's going to definitely part of it for a lot of people. So sorghum or millet would probably be very cheap. But
your budget dove field is going to be a millet field.
Right.
It's very, very cheap to plant and to maintain it. Clearfield sunflowers would be, I would say, the most expensive thing.
But just say you do have the opportunity and the money the budget to be able to do that. So talk to me about that. Down east guy, and then we'll go to Piedmont.
Yeah. So I would say I would start at least try to have an acre. An acre just seems like a good round number to say if I've got an acre of sunflowers, I can draw birds into that. Really, you want to have that situated next to something else that's drawing birds. Like we talked about, even if it's a soybean field, it may still be green. Farmers manage those fairly weed-free. So there's a lot of bare soil around there. There may be a power line nearby. Roosting, young pines, cutovers, they love a roost. Ponds, they need water. Grain silos, any gravel roads, anything that has some kind of draw that a dove needs to survive, you go situate an acre of food, because an acre of food, well maintained, it's still a lot of food.
Yeah.
Again, the big ag guys are saying, I've run a 10, 20 acre field, and that's great, but it's not necessarily required to have a good dove shoot.
Right.
It's an acre of seed, well managed, and relatively accessible on the ground is effective.
And you've proved that.
I have proved it time and time again.
Yeah. And that's what the draw is to what Thomas is doing out there. He's showing that you can do this on a limited budget and limited land.
That's right.
And we like that because there's so many guys who don't have those kind
That's
of
correct.
Big ag fields to work with and be able to plant and that sort of thing. And
again, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying we're at the mercy of a lot of the farmers.
That's correct.
As to what's going to be in the fields that year.
That's exactly right.
So if you have that opportunity for an acre somewhere close by all that stuff, then you might be able to pull out a really nice dove shoot.
That's right. And I remember when we used to go down to Bladen County at a friend of mine's house, it was always, has the farmer cut the corn yet?
Right.
We were always subject to whether the farmer had cut the corn yet. And it's like, no, he hadn't cut it yet. And so it makes it really difficult. You can still have a shoot, critters knock the corn on the ground, the birds are in there, but it makes it difficult. Whereas we know we have our corn or sunflower or whatever on the ground because we're in full control of that management. And it makes for a much more successful opening day.
Let me ask you this. Do you plant... Because if you're doing the clear field, you got to be very careful what you're spraying and that sort of thing. Right. Can you do? What do you use for blind planting? Do you do any of that, or is just open? You plant one thing, it's a mono plant, and that's it.
Yeah. So people like blends. Fall crops are fantastic blended. They complement each other really well. Nurse crops and things like that, which we can talk later about. But as far as managing a dove field, I like monocultures. I like a pure sunflower field and a pure millet field or a pure cornfield. Right. Because most herbicides are not cross-labeled for sunflowers. And so if you're trying to do post-emergent weed control, you're going to have a lot of problems finding something labeled for corn and for sunflowers. I don't think they exist because clethodim is going to damage your corn and a mazamox will absolutely damage your corn. So that's why having that monoculture, it gives you a lot more flexibility in the ability to control weeds.
Yeah.
But blends can be effective. If you planted on rows and you had rows of sunflowers complemented with rows of corn, and you were careful with your drift and spray of herbicide, you could have a blended field.
Yeah.
But there still has to be a very calculated approach there.
Getting into the nuts and bolts of planting, because again, we're talking about guys that'll have a small field or have a limited budget, and it might be limited equipment as
That's
well.
right. Yeah, and I see a lot of that on the channel. A lot of our comments are people asking exactly that. Hey, I have limited equipment in field. What's the minimal equipment I need to do this?
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So again, we started with a 2001 25 horsepower tractor, a disc and a bush hog, and a bucket. We didn't even think we needed a spreader because we don't hand seed
Sure.
and we were able to make a dove field doing that. But the problem we ran into was we were throwing our seed out too close together, right? Naturally, got a handful, you're throwing it out there. So our seeding was too crowded. So we had to put out more seed and ended up being way too crowded. And we had no sprayers. We were doing no weed control.
Okay.
And so you can imagine this field is full of tiny little sunflowers that weren't seed bearing and a carpet of grass beneath it. So we had sunflowers, and we were proud of those sunflowers, right, our first field, but the doves couldn't get to them, and there was no measurable amount of seed. And so by just bush hogging all back off, it opened the ground up, and we were able to have a little bit of a dove shoot.
Right.
But I would say the base level of equipment you need is something that can cut the dirt, because you've got to cut dirt and turn sunflowers under. You cannot top sow sunflowers. They have to be under the dirt, like corn, at least an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches in some cases. So you've got to be able to cut dirt. So a disc at a minimum. You don't even need a bush hog if you can just cut the dirt with a bush hog, and then something to spread them. You can hand seed them, right? But you're going to have a tendency to want to overcrowd those because there's very specific seeding rates.
Right.
Broadcasting versus drilled, and sunflowers about 10 to 15 pounds per acre broadcasted. So you're trying to spread 10, 15 pounds over an acre, that can be difficult.
Yeah, that is very hard.
You're going to have a tendency to want to overseed it. Now, you cut it with lime or something else to kind of stretch it a little further, that can help out. But and then weed control. A sprayer is, I would highly recommend a sprayer, because if you're like where we are, it was pasture land for years and years. There's a thick seed bed in there, and it's going to be a terrible, weedy, grassy mess. And like we were saying earlier, the doves just can't get to it.
Right.
Yeah, so something to cut the dirt, ability to spread some seed efficiently, and then a sprayer for weed control.
So, and trying to do that, I know guys that they've got, shoulder sprayers and, that sort of stuff, I guess, but that will work you pretty good.
You'll have Popeye arm. You're out there pumping the solo backpack and trying to spray out an acre, and it can be really difficult.
Yeah. So at least that much anyway. Now on the millet, if we're talking about millet, say a guy doesn't, what's that going to be?
Yeah, so that you've got a couple options of millet that make it more inviting to somebody trying their first dove field, because millet, when I spill it in the back of my truck, picking it up, it actually germinates in the back of my truck. Millet is very resilient. It'll fall in the gravel in the driveway, it germinates. It'll germinate anywhere.
Right.
And so that gives you a lot of flexibility where you don't have to cut dirt to grow millet. Now, you cannot have a lot of grass and weed competition when you're broadcasting this millet, so that's where you still need a sprayer.
Right.
And so we've done this time and time again. We call it a no-till millet seeding, and I mentioned the wheat earlier. We've done it where we ran our wheat crop all through spring, and all into May and 1st of June, we went in there and broadcasted this case, we used German foxtail millet this year, doing a little bit of a trial. We do a lot of trial and error things on the channel. Just people ask us to try things. We'll try new things. And we're not, diehards when it comes to certain things. And the millet falls down in there. That wheat slowly decays. It's like a mulch cover. And as it kind of peters out, up comes the millet. And so we didn't cut that dirt. We didn't spray that because the wheat died on its own. It was a monoculture of wheat. The wheat suppressed the weed growth. All we did was broadcast that millet into that wheat field, and that millet came right up on its own. And so that can be very effective. And then you let that dry out, and then you don't even need to bush hog it or disc it. You can just set fire to it and burn that off, and all you're left with is bare ground and millet and wheat on the ground. So we're talking.
Now, you're talking about something I think is going to resonate with people there on that.
Very
because,
simple.
Very simple, and I think that's what we want to talk more about that. I think what we'll do is we'll go to break, but we want to talk more about that and a simple setup for you to enhance your dove hunting this fall. It's that time, right?
That's right. It's time.
It's time. So we're going to be talking more about that after the break. Stay with us.
When I was a kid growing up on the farm in little old Lee County, periodically and usually in the fall after selling tobacco or in the early spring when it was time to start breaking ground, my family would make a trip to what seemed like a faraway place called AgriSupply. AgriSupply had everything we needed to keep the farm running, but it's so much more. From repairing trailers to parts for discs and plows, to livestock feed, to lawn and garden, to all that beautiful cast iron cookware. That tradition is still going on, but AgriSupply is now in 9 locations across the Southeast. If you haven't been to an AgriSupply store before, just go. You don't have to have a farm or a fleet of trucks to go in. The public is welcome. I guarantee you'll find something you need. And if you don't need it, I bet you'll want it. AgriSupply, it's what's inside. At some point in your life, I'm betting you have probably thrown a piece of bait on a hook into one of our great state's 7 amazing sounds. If you have, you know how magical they are. Well, that magic is under threat and has been for a long time. That's where the North Carolina Marine and Estuary Foundation comes in, an organization dedicated to improving management practices, educating the public, and developing practical solutions. They want to see North Carolina become the premier fishing destination in the country. And I do too. Visit ncmeffoundation.org to learn more about this wonderful organization and how you can do your part in protecting the 7 jewels of North Carolina and a whole lot more.
And we are back and talking about planning for doves, and I'm really digging it because we were going through the whole motion about sunflowers, and then we talked about millet a little bit, and then we went to sunflowers and got all into that, and then all of a sudden we went back to millet, and I got excited again because it's like there is something that I can see a lot of people being able to do.
That's right.
And we're talking about feeding wildlife here, so we're not hurting anything. We're actually helping.
That's right.
And so it's exciting. So we've got we before the break we were talking about planting millet and the easy germination of it all, and you've been doing some trial and error with different varieties of it, and maybe you'll clue us into what you may feel is the best for North Carolina for our soils there. But there's but the big thing I think is not to overcomplicate, to simplify this thing. So let's pick it up and let's talk about how a guy could go about this and enhance his land to do this.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's pick that up and start back at that again.
That's right. So a lot of the questions we get asked on the channel is, we see all this equipment you've got, but all I've got is an ATV and a sprayer, and I've just got very minimal equipment. Mm-hmm. Can I still have a dove field? Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. And millet is going to be your best option, and really going to be your only option, because it's really easy. It's cheap for starters. The bag of millet's like $50, 50-pound bag, and you're seeding 50 to 100 pounds an acre if you're doing a heavy overseeding, and so it's still very affordable to buy. It's a fraction of the cost of the equivalent of clearfield sunflowers,
right?
And
less intensive, labor intensive.
That's correct. Way less labor intensive because you're just broadcasting it. The seeding rate is not as specific. Your spacing is not as specific. It's much more forgiving of a crop.
Right.
And again, we were talking about the ability to go in there and not have to cut the dirt when you seed the millet. You can actually go into a no-till type situation where you're broadcasting it into. Now, it needs to be the vegetation needs to be dead or dying, because just broadcasting millet into a happy green pasture, for example, the grass is already established.
Yeah, it's going to
outcompete it. Yep, the seed will sit in there and it may germinate, but it's going to rot. And so you do need to have the ability to either have cut the dirt and seed the millet, or done a herbicide burn down to kill off the existing weed layer, and then broadcasted your seed right into that thatch there. And that dying thatch, the detritus we call it, acts as a mulch layer. So that seed falls down in there, and it's like a mulch layer in there, retains moisture, but it's not competing with the seed. So when the seed does germinate, and it will germinate quickly. I'm talking 2 days it can germinate.
Right.
And it'll come right on up. And so that dead grass in there actually acts as a weed suppression layer. And when you seed your millet a little heavier, it's also going to help crowd out and suppress the weed growth. And so that can be done with just an ATV sprayer, simple sprayer. If you want to do a backpack, like we talked about, it's very labor intensive. But at a minimum, I'd say some kind of sprayer. And you go in there and you spray off the area, ideally at least an acre. But you could do smaller if you want to try it. Trial year, you can do smaller, but at least an acre. Spray it off, let it all die, and then come back in there with a bag spreader and spread your millet into there and let it come on up. And it's going to do really well.
Now, maintenance after it gets up, I mean, you pretty much, it's got its chance to get up above the weeds.
That's
there.
right.
So are the weeds going, you're going to probably have weeds coming on.
You're going to have weeds. You're going to have grasses, especially if it's been pasture land. You've got a lot of seed in there. You're going to have grasses and you're going to have weeds. There's not going to be a perfect millet field, but you're going to have predominantly millet in that field. And so it's going to go to maturity. And if it's a pure enough stand of millet, you can, like we talked about earlier, you can actually fire burn that millet field back off. You have to get a burn permit. It's online, simple.
Sure.
No burn restrictions in place, but it's actually fairly easy to burn a field off. And as long as you're being safe about it, it's a lot of fun too. And we've got some cool videos on the channel people can check out. And we just go set fire to it. And the kids are involved. We get a drip torch. The Forestry Service will actually loan you a drip torch.
Oh, really?
So
now
it's really cool.
That's something I didn't know.
Yep, you can get
How
it.
about that? Because I like those. Those are cool.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah.
Going around spreading fire. And
Yeah.
like I said, this is a very family-oriented thing for us. So the kids are involved. And
Yeah.
so you can burn that field back off. And the seed, when it's hardened, it actually doesn't burn. The detritus, it's a quick burn. It just burns all the leaf material off, and it leaves that millet seed sitting on bare ground. Now, if you have a lot of grass that does come back up in there, some people will go back in there and spray a couple weeks before they plan to burn and go ahead and kill that grass.
Kill that grass so it'll get it all. Get it down there to the...
Yeah, because you're going to have grass. It's especially in your first year, you're fighting decades of fescue reseeding back out. You're fighting a seed bed in there.
So you've got what time frame does this burn need to happen? Because you've got to time this.
Yeah, I like middle of August. Yep.
And that's going to give the birds time enough to find it.
You got it.
To get on it. Of course, in a situation like you, they're imprinted. They know it's something there anyway.
I've got a fantastic video of the dove field smoldering and the birds coming in to land on the wire in mid-August. Like, we already know it's here. It's like they flew over and saw the black, burn, and they know that's food.
Birds are oriented toward color, so that black would probably attract them.
That's right. A lot
of
contrast.
Yeah, they know that.
But but you don't want your millet on the ground too early because that millet is going to reseed itself. If you seed it, if you burn it off too early and you drop that seed on the ground, it'll reseed itself, and you don't want to germinate your own seed because then it's not going to be viable for the birds to eat.
Right.
So there's a critical window there where if it's too early, it'll germinate and regrow. You don't want a green dove field, right? You want that viable seed. But if you do it too late, of course, then it's not mature enough for dove season. So there is a critical window there.
Well, speaking of critical window, let's talk about the beginning of it all because that's critical. That's going to that time you plant it.
That's right.
Is going to be what dictates everything else down the line, right?
That's exactly right. So what you got to do is these crops are specific to 60-day, 90-day corn, sometimes 110-day maturity. Well, you have to account enough time for it to dry out to be a viable seed.
Right.
And so let's say it may mature in 50 to 55 days, but it's not actually dried out enough to where you could burn it off. So you have to allow that drying time.
Right.
So if you're wanting to burn off millet in the middle of August, you need to start all the way back at the end of May, 1st of June, to have that window enough time to grow it to maturity and then to dry out enough to burn it.
And then to burn it, but also that burn needs to happen prior to give time to get on it.
That's correct.
You don't want to do it the day before dove
That's
season.
correct. Yeah.
So
that's correct.
So okay, so we've designated the end of May.
That's right.
We're into May now.
Yeah, I've done it in June before, and it just seems to be too late.
Too late. Okay.
Yep, because I've always had to go back in there and either bush hog it or spray it to terminate it, and I don't like doing that because it's time, fuel, and herbicides unnecessarily.
Sure.
So bumping that back to that third week of May seems to be a sweet spot for getting it in the ground.
Okay, third week of May. So if you're hearing this, we're talking about millet right now and planting that for your dove. So we're at the first week, and by the time you see this, it'll be the second week. So it'll be you better be getting ready. It's time. So we're saying it's time, and then you'll be able to work with it as it grows. When it gets up, and you really don't have to do anything else.
There's nothing to do it. You can fertilize it. If you want to bump it with fertilizer, millet responds really well to fertilizer. And if it's your first year doing it, you might want to go ahead and fertilize it. I'm always going to recommend a soil test, know what you have. But if you're in North Carolina, most places are high in phosphorus, just as a general rule of thumb. So you don't need phosphorus, and most plants are nitrogen hungry. So I typically go with the 3400 on the millet and just throw it the nitrogen, and it's grows. I did a side-by-side on the channel one time where I fertilized one side heavy and the other side just normal, and it was like a chia pet. It was incredible to see how it responded to that fertilizer. So you can fertilize it pretty heavy.
And a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, Thomas, is already hit these subjects there. So there's going to be a lot of content for you to be able to watch.
That's right.
to
It's
help
all
you
there.
It's
Yep.
all there.
Yep.
We'll talk more about that in the channel here. But that's the beautiful thing about it. We're just talking about it now, but these things have already been, he's already got illustrations of it, and that's what a lot of people are looking for.
That's
there.
right.
So
Yeah,
on
we've
the
got
channel.
year and year after trial and error, and we've built upon things. Sometimes we've changed things, and we'll go back and we'll admit fault and say, yeah, this didn't quite work out like we hoped to, but we're going
Right.
to change it up this year. And people appreciate that we're always trying to adapt and improve the property.
So we're talking about we plant the third week of May. We potentially fertilize or not, but anyway, this is going to grow up and it's going to mature. What is are all millet going to be about the same amount of time frame that it takes to grow?
They're very similar. Pearl millet takes
Pearl,
the longest. That's more in line with your sorghums. That's more of a 90-day.
That gets really
That's
tall.
right. That's the tall. Got
Yeah.
more of a cylindrical cone, kind of real high
Right.
seed head on it. But we're talking brown top, Dove Proso, German foxtail, even Japanese millet. All those are kind of in that same window. They germinate quickly and they mature quickly.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you're going to have that planted at the third week to fourth week of May, the last week of May.
That's right.
That's going to put your you're going to mature out and start drying at what time?
Yeah,
frame is
so
that?
they say it's a 60-day crop, but in my experience, we'll start seeing seed heads at 45 to 50 days. I mean, it grows quick, especially if it's got happy ground and no competition.
Right.
And so you can account on seeing seed heads at about 50 to 55 days, and then it's giving you a couple weeks to dry.
Mm-hmm.
And things dry out. Millet is a much thinner stalk than, say, corn. Corn has a long drying period. It's a lot of moisture in corn, whereas millet's a tiny little stalk.
Right.
The second
it's hollow too, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The second it dries out, you'll see the leaves starting to yellow already.
Right.
So millet dries out a lot quicker than corn does. So that drying period is going to be
So the
different.
drying period's done, and then you've got an opportunity. You've got what would be ideally what you'd want to burn? How far ahead of the
You nailed it.
Dove
2
season?
weeks.
2
You
weeks.
nailed it. Yeah. That seems to be the sweet spot for imprinting the birds. With a seed on the ground, you can retain the birds without that seed going back to germinating. Because we'll even come out there the following weekend, that second weekend we hunt, and we already see germination from that millet already trying to germinate.
germinate?
And you don't want that.
Right. You don't want that. You don't want the green.
That's right. You don't want the green.
And so then you may have to, because the green's in it, you may have to glyphosate spray, or you spray something.
We
else in.
won't. At that point, that's when we go to our winter wheat top sowing. So on that field, again, that's another tool in the tool chest is the ability to go in there and top sow that winter wheat. And North Carolina, there's a seeding window. It's kind of a gray area because it doesn't go that deep into August to where I would feel comfortable saying the second week of August you can top sow your wheat.
Right.
But close enough, especially in the western region of North Carolina. If you're in the mountains, you can absolutely push it back into August, no problem.
Right.
But you can top sow your wheat. A lot of times we'll be done hunting on that Saturday, and I'll go get on the tractor and I'll top sow my wheat September 1st, and then we'll come hunt over it that next weekend.
Right.
And when you're following no more than 100 pounds per acre, it's completely legal to top sow
Right.
that wheat.
Yeah. So you heard that. That's and I've been in fields like that, and I get a little bit a little surprised. I see that as like
the Wildlife Commission does it. I walk a lot of public
That's right.
dove fields, and you'll go out there and see strips where they've disced it, and there's the wheat sitting right on top of the ground where it wasn't drilled. And so
Yeah.
the Wildlife Commission does the same thing.
That's great. Well, that's inspiration for me, but I also see we have equipment, so we're not as maybe strapped as some of the other guys are. But that's really a great thing for a guy to be able to go out there under these kind of and be able to watch how it's being done, and there's instructionals and that sort of thing that Thomas is doing. So there's a lot of information there that we can we say direct yourself to. And maybe are there particular episodes that you can direct them to from here?
I can, yeah. So YouTube is great. There's a search hourglass on the YouTube homepage of the channel, YellowLab 247, and you just type in there millet, brown top millet. If you type dove field in, you're going to get overwhelmed. You won't know where to start. You got to get really specific. So dove, the brown top millet's a lot of what we plant. But if you just type in millet, there's going to be endless videos in there of our millet plantings and updates. We do a lot of updates. People love the updates.
Right.
So we don't just go in there and show you how we're planting it. We update you almost weekly on the channel.
You're very active there.
Yeah, very active. And people like it because they also want to have a bearing for what they're doing because a lot of people are mirroring what I'm doing. And they'll come back to the channel to say, hey, I planted last weekend too. Are you seeing this? And we're seeing this. And we'll have that dialogue in the comments. I'm active in the comments and people appreciate that. So it's a real-time, living, breathing channel. Yeah, everything you see is being done this year. It's not, kind of a year delay like some of the productions are, right? So it's real-time what you're doing, I'm doing at that same interval. Yeah.
Well, it's good. Let's find out some more things about that Thomas is very well versed on here. And you know, we talked about what we plant and the why.
Yeah.
I mean, the why is specifically.
We're trying to attract more doves. It's that simple, right?
Right.
We're trying to attract more doves to have a more successful hunt. And that ties into the family component. We've all sat in that afternoon sun hoping to kill a few more doves.
Yeah.
And you're out there, even as wing shooters are passionate about it, we're like, why am I here, right? We're just sweating bullets. And so imagine that 7-8-year-old kid out there with you, sweating bullets. He's not having fun.
Right.
And so the more birds you can attract, the more interactive it can be, the more likely we're going to be imprinting on these kids to say, hey, this was fun. I remember that time I went with Dad and we shot a bunch of doves. And that's kind of what all this is. We're trying to have that real fun experience for them, make it enjoyable.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, and that's where we can't really express enough about what hunting means to us.
That's right.
And it comes from those childhood experiences.
That's exactly
you
right.
know, and I don't find, you know, in my experience, I'm glad and probably and I know, you know, don't want to mention too much, but you lost your father.
That's
recently.
right. Yeah, we lost Dad back in December, and he was the keystone for all this, man. He made the investment in the property and the equipment, and he basically said, whatever you need to make this happen, I'll make it happen. And God bless him, because
that's beautiful.
He's really invested. And I'm gonna tear up. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand. I didn't mean to make that.
No, it's okay.
Thing,
and so mom's still out
should,
there. And
your mom's still there.
Yep. So mom's still there, and he passed that baton to her, and she gave me and my brother free reign. She says, if you want to do it, you can make it happen. So,
that's beautiful.
So we'll have to have you come down there and check it out.
Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to come down and you know, and make this kind of a continuing connection there to this sort of thing. And in fact, we don't have to go that far.
I was going to say, I think you punched it in about 20 minutes. So not far at all.
That's great.
One thing I do want to skip back to as far as the timing, we didn't talk timing of the sunflowers. We talked timing.
Okay, let's go through that.
Of the millet. And the sunflowers, we need to plant those a little bit earlier because, again, they have a longer maturation time to when they actually mature out, and they have a longer drying time. So those are actually getting planted earlier.
Okay, so that's like now?
That's right, now. So typically, and we'll go back to Skip. Skip's at his windows between April 25th, if I recall, and like May 11th. That was his window for when to plant your sunflowers, and I couldn't agree more.
Right.
Any earlier than that, your sunflowers mature out really quick, and songbirds can get in there and really wreak havoc on them.
Right.
The finches get in there and strip them out, and you'll go out there and you'll have a sunflower stalk, but you have to turn them over, and there's no seed in there.
Right.
And so if you've got large acreage, you can get away with that just because you've outplanted the pressure.
Right.
But again, a lot of that we're doing is talking small acreage, small fields, acre, 2 acres, 3 acres, where finches, and we're talking hundreds of them, hundreds of finches will get in there and they'll strip us out. So we don't want to plant too early because we don't want to mature too early and lose our crop.
Right.
We don't want to plant too late for the obvious reason is we won't have seed on the ground ready for the opener.
Right.
And so that window seems to be the sweet spot is April 25th to May 10th, 11th, right in that window.
Okay.
Last year I planted May 11th. I said, what's the latest I can plant? And our timing was incredible. We had full bloom sunflowers in about 60 days, and we were dried out bush hogging them 2 weeks before the opener.
Wow.
And it was just perfect timing.
Wow.
And so I know some people that have already put them in the ground. They message me. People love to update me, and I just absolutely love it. They'll send me pictures and emails and stuff. It's, hey, I already got my sunflowers in the ground, man. I'm like, that's great. It's a little early.
Yeah.
But different people have different goals for what they're doing.
Sure.
So yeah, that would be my recommendation. End of April, first 2 weeks of May, but certainly no later than second week of May. You're going to be too late.
So we talked about what we plant, why we plant, when to plant.
That's
Have
right.
we got any who, what, where, when, and why?
Yeah, so we've got some kind of you mentioned the millet, that there's really nothing to do along the way as far as weed controls, and you can bump it with fertilizer if you want to, but really if right there at the end you're going to burn it, or terminate it with a herbicide right there at the end and bush hog it. If you don't burn it, you would want to bush hog it, just again to get that matting down and the birds can get in there and feed on it. The sunflowers, we planted them. We fertilize at the time of planting. You can come back in there and side sow it, top dress it like you would corn.
Right.
But I fertilize initially at the time of planting and then let it ride.
Right.
And that's worked really well for us. It keeps you out of the field as much. It's time spent on the tractor. You just don't need to go back in there a second time. And then you're going to want to do your post-emergent weed spraying if you do have weeds and grasses come in. Now, I run a very strict pre-emergent herbicide program, and all that's outlined on the channel, telling people very specific products. Pre-emergents actually kill the weed before you ever see it.
Right.
So imagine an imaginary blanket of chemical spread across the ground. So the second it germinates, it dies. It can't grow.
Right.
And that makes for a very, very effective clean sunflower field.
Right.
Is a strong pre-emergent.
Because there's a certain amount of shading, I guess, that the sunflowers do.
That's right, but only once they get up to a certain height.
Right.
That's right. So that's the critical window. You're trying to get the sunflower to where he's pedaling out, maybe like the 12-leaf stage, somewhere in there where it's pedaling out, starting to shade out the ground, then it's suppressing its own weeds.
Right.
And so you'll spray in that window too. You want to spray between the 4 and 8-leaf stage. And so if you've got a really comprehensive pre-emergent program, then you're not having to go in there and spray post-emergent. Right. But in the event, like we have a lot of thistle, and it's not labeled on any of the herbicides I use, and it's just terrible stuff. Whereas the Mazamox, I can go in there and spray it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it. So we've got the part where how we manage it. We've got some more stuff to talk about before we get too far into this. I think we'll take a break right now. But you're listening to the Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Douglas, and we are with Thomas Moore, YellowLab 247. And he's got a very informative YouTube channel that you need to check out, and you'll find out some great things, specifically if you're interested in. Of course, you do deer too as well, right?
We do deer, we do turkey plots, but our hallmark, if you will, is definitely the dove field stuff and then the duck swamp stuff, which we'll get into.
Yeah, which we're looking forward to getting into that because we know people are going to have interest. We're going to be right back right after these messages.
Hey, make sure you watch Carolina All Out on our YouTube channel and catch us on a live TV Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And coming this summer, we'll be airing nationally on the Pursuit channel 4 times a week, spreading the good news to all who will listen about our great state and what she has to offer. At some point in your life, I'm betting you have probably thrown a piece of bait on a hook into one of our great state's 7 amazing sounds. If you have, you know how magical they are. Well, that magic is under threat and has been for a long time. That's where the North Carolina Marine and Estuary Foundation comes in, an organization dedicated to improving management practices, educating the public, and developing practical solutions. They want to see North Carolina become the premier fishing destination in the country. And I do too. Visit ncmeffoundation.org to learn more about this wonderful organization and how you can do your part in protecting the 7 jewels of North Carolina and a whole lot more.
And we are back and talking about planning and about wing shooting and about all these great things that we can do to make our experience on that first weekend in September so much better.
Yeah, we started nerding out there for a little bit, getting into the nitty-gritty bolts of it. I got kind of excited, but no, it's really exciting stuff. And you're right, it all builds to that one opening day. But a properly managed field goes well beyond that. You can actually enjoy a lot of hunts in that field.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we talked about before we went to the break that we were going to talk about ducks, but what we made a decision in, and I hate to break it to you guys, but that just means you're going to have to listen to us again because there's so much going on with your duck planning.
That's right. Yeah.
That we really need to dedicate a show to that.
That's right. So it warrants a standalone.
Yeah. No doubt. So we're going to make this a dove show all about planning and that sort of thing. And so we've got a few more things to talk about, but you can see the passion that Thomas has for what he's doing. And so, he wants to see, that's part of his deal. He wants to see you be successful in that. And so he's created this resource, if you will, that people can refer to and be better. We've had the 2 bald biologists on before, and it's like better fishing. So let's just say better hunting with YellowLab 24/7 there.
That's right.
Better dove hunting, better
and the
wing
joke
shooting.
is it's worth the price of admission. There's
sure.
no paywalls. You don't have to pay. It's all there. It's all available. It's free. And I think that's super cool that we can offer that to people, that it's there. They can go back and review it, pause it, speed it up, slow it down, and all that information is there for them.
That's right. Get a plan. So now that they can refer to all this, but you're going to kind of help people through this last little part here, talk about having a plan.
That's right. Yeah.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So having a plan, I tell people start with the end in mind, right? Mm-hmm. So the end is we want a field productive in dove hunting, big, beautiful sunflowers, and a charred off, burned off millet field, right? Mm-hmm. So everything works back from that. And that's why the timing is so important when you talk about these planting windows. And you can't just wake up Saturday and go, oh crap, it's May 10th. I forgot to buy my sunflowers. Because you don't just go to Walmart and buy Clearfield sunflowers.
No.
And all of a sudden you're scrambling trying to find these sunflowers. So you have to have a plan.
Right.
And that goes all the way back to now. I've already purchased my sunflowers and all my seed. That always typically gets done in March. 1st of April, I'll buy all that. Fertilizer too, just to make sure what you need is available. Because this isn't stuff that's readily available everywhere. There is some specifics to it. So having a plan, starting with the end in mind, being prepared. Soil test, we didn't get into that much. We've referenced it, but soil tests are really important.
Yes.
And that's probably the most overlooked thing because that's not really the fun and flashy stuff going out there in February and jamming a rod in the ground and taking it up the ag center and getting them to test it for you.
Right.
But it is critical, and I'm going to tell you a quick story. So we had soil tested 7-8 years ago at the farm and knew we were high in phosphorus, which is very common for our farmland around here. And so we went with the high nitrogen, no phosphorus fertilizer, overlooking potassium. And I wasn't very versed in how important potassium was for sunflowers. So I did a little bit of research, and it's very important. It's for drought resistance, plant health, plant growth, and we were deficient in potassium. And so we had always grown nice sunflowers. Well, last year, I went ahead and using my soil test, added in the appropriate rate of potassium. And if you recall last year, after planting, we had about a 2-month drought, if you recall. A lot of bad-looking corn around.
Sure was.
Our sunflowers never even wilted.
Wow.
Never wilted. And we don't irrigate. And I looked up one of the properties of potassium is drought tolerance in sunflowers.
How about that?
And so by using a soil test, adjusting our method, putting enough potassium on them, we beat the drought. And so I'd share that to tell you soil tests are really important. So that goes back even earlier than this April-March timeframe. You've got to get your soil samples turned in, get your results. That's part of your plan is having a fertilizing plan as well.
And you recommend doing the soil tests, you said in February, March?
It can be free sometimes of the year. I don't remember that exactly, but the ag extension offices will offer it free.
Okay.
Even if it's not free, I think it's like $5 a sample.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
So we're
We've done
talking
it before.
low cost here. It just takes them a couple of weeks to turn that around. So just, again, having that, because you have to have enough time to get your samples, get your results back, then buy your fertilizer accordingly.
Right.
So February is a good time frame. There's not a whole lot going on, kind of a transitionary month. Get out there and do your soil test.
Yeah, we had our guys over at Nutrien do ours for
That's
us.
right. Yeah, they're great about it.
And Seth and those guys did it for us over in San Francisco. So that worked out good. So from there, let's see, after you've got a plan and you're educating yourself.
That's right.
Reading and listening to podcasts, listening
That's
to
right. Yeah, right here
to
on the podcast,
to watching YouTube videos.
That's right. Your time is the investment. It's not always money.
Right.
Time is the critical piece of this because just going out there and throwing things at it because you think you kind of know what you're doing, you can waste a lot of time, and you could blow a whole season if done incorrectly. And I have heard that. I've had people come back to me and tell me they mixed up their ounces versus pints or something ratio, and they killed their entire crop. And they said, admittedly, I rushed through it. And I was like, it's nuanced stuff here. And so investing in your time is critical. Educating yourself on what you're doing. Again, I'm a 20-year licensed pesticide applicator, so I'd kind of take it for granted because I've done it for so long, but it can be intimidating to people.
Sure.
So having resources like our channel that get into the actual label, educating yourself, just truly sitting down and reading your label. There's so much information there. And a lot of people want to run to the internet now, and even AI. I tested AI the other day, and it failed my herbicide question. And so I was like, all right, so it's still not there yet. And I put in a question like, can I use this? It's not cross-labeled, and kind of did this little question for it. Had no idea.
Right.
I might have been talking a different language to it, and it had no idea. And so reading the labels, it's there, educating yourself on what you're doing. Don't take herbicides for granted. They have impacts to the environment. And I only use them when I have to use them. And I don't take that lightly. I do use them, and I use plenty of them for weed control, but it's for a reason. I know that can be contentious. It can be really tough to manage a dove field without any herbicide.
Right.
I'll just be candid about that. It can be really tough. Having a plan, investing your time, understanding it's going to cost money. And it cracks me up. I'll have people in the comments saying, these Clearfield sunflowers are expensive. And their profile picture is a 50 horsepower tractor with a cab on it. And so they invested, in this big old piece of equipment. And then all of a sudden it's time to put a little bit of money into a quality seed. And that's the stop for them. And I said, well, it's not necessarily for everybody, right? Whatever's in your budget. But it does make a difference.
Yeah.
To have that ability to have some drought tolerance and insect tolerance, and then post-spraying them, it makes a big difference.
So moving on from that, you're going to, let's see, wait, let me make sure I'm reading this right. Willing to meet the time, make the time and the money.
Yeah. Might need to put your glasses on
Yeah,
there.
I sure do.
Showing
Boy,
your age,
yeah,
Chris.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
No,
telling you.
yeah. So willingness to
Investing. Yeah, you've already done. Yeah,
That's right. Invest that
money.
time, invest the money, because again, this does cost, and I
Yep.
will warn people: you're buying seed to do it correctly, right? You're buying seed, you're buying fertilizer, you're buying equipment. It does take time and money, and that needs to be acknowledged. There are certainly shortcuts to success with the millet and certain crops and all, but
Right.
Sunflowers are an investment.
Yeah.
And that's just the short of it.
And it's I guess it's how much you value your shoot.
That's
there at the
right.
end.
But I was going to say it's a worthy investment because millet field's not too glorifying. Nobody pulls off the side of the highway to go take a picture in a millet field.
Right.
But what do they do to the DOT sunflower plots?
Oh, yeah.
That's right. And so it's a family thing for us. The Mom's Church, Tyson Creek, will come down there. They take pictures. Our whole family has a big sunflower day. We go out there. We have family pictures and just walking around enjoying these sunflowers. And,
Yeah.
and there's bees. Mom does the honeybee thing. There's bees all in them. You get to enjoy them. And so sunflowers are a worthy investment.
Yeah.
There's just nothing like them.
Yeah, they feed. I'm pulling them out myself and chewing on them too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah. And so, the other piece of that was humility.
So talk to me about the humility
Yeah, so
side.
and I've caught some flack on this on the channel. People say you kind of preaching here a little bit. There's going to be things that are hard in fact, like certain herbicide rates and certain chemical. There are things that are hard in fact, but there are other things that just because it's not labeled for it or just because it's not what the farmer does doesn't mean it doesn't work. And so you
Right.
have to be willing to say, okay, maybe I should try this over here, and what I'm doing is not working. And we've experienced that too. And I had a comment one time that said, I love how you show the bad and the good.
Right.
If we fault, we show it, and we tell you why. That's part of our thing is we don't get it all right.
Right.
And one year we didn't do crop rotation one year, and we went out there and all the sunflowers were just about gone, and it was a weevil got in there and it ate them all out. So here I am having to tell this channel that flagship is sunflowers. Why I don't have any sunflowers? Because a weevil got in there because I didn't rotate my crops, right? And so there are these experiences along the way that we share with people. We're not just going to show the good.
Yeah.
And the ability to admit that, humility, right? But also in your own management plan, when you're going out there, is saying, this didn't work last year. Why didn't it work? Well, I didn't spray for weeds. Okay, maybe we need to go ahead and talk about herbicides and adopt that into the program.
Well, that makes the sense of the world to me there. Yeah. So without my glasses on, I'll do it. Keep it simple.
That's right, and that goes back to the dove field using millet. A simple approach, but specifically to the sunflowers, kind of the big hallmark for what we were doing is the broadcast seeding method, where we're not out there planting on rows, and we're using a disc. We're broadcasting it with a spreader, getting really nice even coverage, and then we're disking it under lightly and then cultipacking it. So these sunflowers aren't on nice even rows, but we still end up with a really effective field.
Right.
And so row planters are not cheap. You have to maintain them. Big channel announcement for us that is going live as we speak is we bought a 2-row planter. So that's our first row planter. So that's going live tonight, which is super cool for us. It's been building to this moment because we've always broadcast spread. We rented a no-till drill from the co-op, and that went okay. But we did invest in a 2-row planter, so that's going to be a whole new season for us is planting on rows.
Right.
But that is not necessary to have an effective dove field. You can do it with just a disc and disking them under and packing that soil up.
Right.
Yeah, and so encouraging people, that goes back to keeping it simple, is you don't have to have an expensive John Deere planter to plant sunflowers.
Right.
You can and corn too. We broadcasted and planted corn the same way.
Right.
So all this can be planted with a disc and a cultipacker.
And that needs that firm seed bed, right?
That's right. Firm it up.
Yeah, firm it up there for
Because
sure.
we've come out there after a hard rain and that seed be exposed everywhere where it washed it off.
Right.
So you do want to firm that seed bed up.
Yeah. So the last thing that you have here on this, I think it's the last thing there, that you have on that little list there.
Yeah.
Is don't feel pressured by people further ahead of you in their journey.
That's right. And that plays back into what we were talking about earlier as far as your systems and methods and things that work for you. And I'm on a food plot forum, and there's definitely some high and mighties in there. And they said, well, just go buy a drill. And they'll say, what drill do you have? And they'll, Great Plains this. It's a $20,000 rig.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody's asking them, what's the best way to plant an acre of sunflowers? And you're going to recommend they go buy a $20,000 rig, right? So it's like, know what's in your budget.
That's right.
And don't feel pressured by just because your neighbor has the big fancy green that you have to have that to have a successful field.
Right.
And that's a lot of what we preach. If we've been doing it with a tractor and a disc and a cultipacker, and we've not been planting on pretty perfect rows, and we've had a lot of success doing that.
Because they don't care about the rows.
They don't care about the rows at all. They care about one thing, and that's seed they can get on the ground.
They can get on the ground and get
That's
to
right.
it. Yeah.
The rows are for us. The
Yeah.
rows are not for the doves. That's a great point.
Well, all this is very fascinating, and there's so much more that Thomas has got to say about this, and especially in the ducks. And I'm really excited about getting into that. So we're going to do another podcast about that soon, because now is the time to be doing this. It's a great time to be talking about these sort of things, because you really are. It's almost a year-round thing that you're trying to do.
It is year-round, Chris.
But I find that from what experience I've had, that once you get into it, it's like it's this driver thing.
It is. The process becomes the enjoyment.
Right.
And the hunting is just the cherry on top. It really is. People, and I see that a lot with people that get into it. They just enjoyed the process, and they talk about, for us, it's a huge family component. My boys come out there with me, and then, like I said, the family, the church come out there, enjoy the sunflowers, and of course, the opening day hunt. Everybody comes out of the woodworks when it's hunting season time.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, where were they in May and June? It was time to go cut dirt, right?
Right.
But no, I'm kidding aside. I do have a lot of help. One of my best friends, Brandon Roberts, he's a good friend of mine. You see him on the channel slogging around the mud, and he's still doing the pond management thing. He'll come out there and help me, and it's a family friend oriented thing. It's a big deal for us.
Well, that's a beautiful thing about it. But being able to put those kind of that kind of time in, bring the family involved, it's really a part of what we try to promote here at Carolina All Out. It is a family thing, and there's so many lessons that you can teach your children in the field, and especially when you're doing this type of work here, because this pays off. You can remind them whenever they're knocking one out of the skies, like we're having fun today.
This started in April.
We started way back in April there. So so that's a really good.
I've got a great picture last year when Dad was in the hospital. We were running electric fence, and he couldn't be out there, but I had my boys, and mind you, they're 4 and 7,
right?
And I had them screwing insulators for electric fence on a pole, and the 4-year-old would preload the screw, and then the 8-year-old would take it and screw it in the fence, and we had a whole little system going. And if a 4 and a 7-year-old can go out there and run electric fence, certainly you guys can too.
Yeah.
So, but that's an important piece. We've got to protect these sunflowers.
Yeah.
Because the deer eat us out.
Yeah.
So that's an important piece of this. I don't want to. I think we mentioned that, but I don't want to forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. They do like sunflowers and a lot of things. So you got to be careful about those things. Well, this has all been very good. And I think what we'll do is we will call this one, but we have got another one coming up soon, and we're going to be talking about ducks.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I get a lot of questions about this one.
Yeah, no doubt, because ducks is, but people love them. And we do too. We do, and we love to see the fact that that these birds are responding to the work that's going on there. It's kind of unique there, so we're going to be talking about all that.
And again, it's simple, and it's not overcomplicated, but we have to have a plan and a process, and we'll get into that in the next one.
Well, that sounds fantastic there. Well, I guess we're going to wrap this one up for this podcast. I'm Chris Douglas, signing off for Thomas Moore here, YellowLab 24/7. And we thank you for hanging out with us. And we're going to be talking about ducks next go around.
I'm looking forward to it, Chris.
So always remember to make our state your next adventure.
Unless you're saddling up a horse, getting to your favorite fishing or hunting destination depends on fuel. That's why we choose Quality Mart, Quality Plus, and Go Gas. With 137 locations across North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and South Carolina, you'll find the fuel to get you to the field or on the water, and the ice, drinks, and snacks to enjoy your time while you're there. That's Quality Mart, Quality Plus, and Go Gas, official partners of Carolina All Out. When I was a kid growing up on the farm in little old Lee County, periodically and usually in the fall after selling tobacco or in the early spring when it was time to start breaking ground, my family would make a trip to what seemed like a faraway place called AgriSupply. AgriSupply had everything we needed to keep the farm running, but it's so much more. From repairing trailers to parts for discs and plows, to livestock feed, to lawn and garden, to all that beautiful cast iron cookware. That tradition is still going on, but AgriSupply is now in 9 locations across the Southeast. If you haven't been to an AgriSupply store before, just go. You don't have to have a farm or a fleet of trucks to go in. The public is welcome. I guarantee you'll find something you need. And if you don't need it, I bet you'll want it. AgriSupply, it's what's inside.